Club badges, instantly recognisable. But what we forget is that these weren't knocked up for 10 quid on Fiverr. Almost all badges, or crests, or shields, or whatever you want to call them, tell a story about the club's history. Many have got little details that we never realised. Some have lasted longer than others, some have pretty much never changed in over 100 years, and some tell us things about the club that we never knew before. Unless you're a nerd, then you knew. But today we'll be looking at club badges banned for advertising alcohol and tobacco to kids, the team who didn't have an official badge in the 90s, the time a Russian club and English newspaper had a petty argument online over their club badge, and the badge where DC Comics of all people threatened suing the club for copyright infringement. I'll just be picking a few of my favourites from around the world, just ones I liked or found interesting. I mean, it's my video, I'll do what I want, try and stop me. But I digress, starting alphabetically with Ajax. Ajax's first badge was just round with the image of a player in their kit, which was changed 11 years later when they updated it to show the player in the new kit colours. Imagine that, teams updating their badge every year when they change kits. But anyway, Ajax changed their kits as they got promoted to the top division in 1911 and their kit clashed with Sparta Rotterdam's, so they took the colours red, white and black from the flag of Amsterdam. In 1928 they replaced the badge to show the legendary mythological hero Ajax, a badge which stuck for 62 years until this one came along, which was just a simplified version of Ajax's head and is drawn with only 11 lines to signify the 11 players on the team, something not massively uncommon as seen with Santos and Sevilla as well as FC Kellogg's old badge, and stars were later added with each star symbolising 10 league titles won. Arsenal Football Club. Their first badge was the Woolwich Town crest from where they came. They used cannons because the town has a strong military history and it wasn't until 1949 that their first colour badge was used. Legend has it that the colours red and white were chosen as they were inspired by Notts Forest, as two of the club's founders had played there. In 2002 they ran into problems when they wanted to pattern their new crest, so they had to come up with a completely new one. They kept the cannon but completely changed its appearance. They turned it to the right, as they wanted to look forward to the club's future, and in particular their new home at the Emirates. Aston Villa. The Villa badge hasn't changed massively over the years, but the lion in the badge has been stolen from Scotland's national crest, as their chairman, William McGregor, was from there. After Randy Lerner took over the club, the white star was added to reflect their 1982 European Cup win, something which Villa fans never talk about. Athletic Bilbao. Bilbao were formed by Englishmen, hence the use of the English word athletic in their name, and used this badge to begin with, which is the exact same badge that Atletico Madrid used. That's because Atletico Madrid were formed as a spin-off club from Bilbao. It was only 18 years after they were formed that they became independent from Bilbao, and the reason they're both playing the same colours. And this is the badge that they use today. Quite neat, showing the San Anton Cathedral, the San Anton Bridge, and the Guernica Oak, which symbolises Basque independence. The crosses come from the crest of the province of Biscay, where Bilbao's capital. But interestingly, in 1941, Spanish ruler Franco, who was a bit of a knob, said that foreign club names were not allowed, so Athletic were forced to become Atletico. But in 1972, after his rule came to an end, Atletico became English again. Barcelona. Barca's badge hasn't changed much over the years. The club was founded in 1899 by this guy, Joan Gamper, a man who had had fingers in many pies, as he also founded FC Zurich in Switzerland. While working as an accountant in Barcelona in 1899, he set up the team that would become Barca. He was the first captain in the history of both clubs and also played for Basel, which is where the team colours and stripes come from if some stories are believed, although Barca themselves reject that story. This badge was created in 1910 after a competition which was won by a guy named Carl Comamella, which seems a little unfair as he played for them at the time, where he came up with a design known all around the football world. This bit is the George Cross, which is associated with Barcelona's patron saint. This bit is stolen from the Catalan flag. He's took some initials in the middle and football in the front of the team colours, which surely looks like a basketball if you ask me. Is it just me? Anyway, this design has pretty much stuck ever since, with only minor changes in name similar to Bilbao during Franco's reign. Boca Juniors. A relatively neat badge with the club's initials and a load of stars, but lesser known is that the stars represent each title won. It started in 1970 where 30 stars were added for their titles won, which was updated to this one in 1996 where an extra 20 stars were added, which is rather pretentious. And in the years that followed, they've periodically added new stars, resulting in this latest one taken from their club website with 66 stars. But bizarrely, the Boca badge was born because of a beautiful big boat from Sweden. In 1906, Boca played a match against Nottingham del Almagro, and as the kits of both teams are similar, they made a pact that the loser would have to change colours. Boca lost and decided to take their colours from the nearby port where a Swedish ship sailed in, so they took the yellow and blue from the Swedish flag and came up with this for their first badge. Apparently, I wasn't there. Brighton. In 1975 the Brighton badge was a dolphin, which was the team's nickname, but fans didn't really like it and it never made it onto the shirts. Legend has it that in 1977, during a home match with rivals Crystal Palace, the Palace fans were screaming "Eagles, Eagles," obviously their nickname. So the Brighton fans responded by chanting "Seagulls, Seagulls," which has stuck since. Much later in 1997, Dick Knight became chairman, and to stamp his mark on the club and distance himself from the nightmare leaders before him, he introduced a new badge. Then fast forward to 2009 and Tony Bloom came along and introduced an up-to-date badge to mark the new stadium and the club's return to the Championship, in a badge which was massively different to their badge from the 70s. Massively different. Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace got its name from the area in London named Crystal Palace, obviously, but the area got its name from an enormous glass structure that was erected to house the Great Exhibition of 1851. After the exhibition, the structure was moved to Sydenham Hill in South London, and the area was then named after it. The club was then founded there in 1905, hence the structure being in the badge in various forms since. In 1973, Malcolm Allison took over as manager and made considerable changes to the club's image, changing their nickname to the Eagles following in the footsteps of Benfica, and switched to the kit to red and blue in homage to Barcelona. As a result of the Benfica connection, the Eagles adopted on the badge. Despite being founded in 1905, it wasn't until over 40 years later that they used the badge, and the original Crystal Palace burnt down in 1936. The structure, not the club. Eintracht Braunschweig. The pissheads among you will notice something odd about the badge that the club used in 1973 thanks to the sneaky thinking of chairman Ernst Fricker. In 1972, Braunschweig was skint as iron and they struck up a partnership with Jägermeister, but the Karens over in the German FA wouldn't allow them to display sponsor names on the kit. So crafty Ernst got together with Jägermeister owner Gunter Mast to come up with a cunning plan, put the Jägermeister logo on the club badge. This seriously confused the German FA as there were no real rules on club badges, with the only rule being to limit the size of the badges, and sure enough the petty FA measured the badge when it was first used to make sure it was the right size. How pathetic. Mast will go on to become the president of the club, and their little collaboration would change the rules in Germany, as 7 months later the FA gave approval for sponsor logos and names to be shown on match kits. Everton. Everton's badge was designed by their club secretary Theo Kelly, who decided that the main motif on the badge would be Prince Rupert's Tower, which sounds lovely until you realise it's known locally as the Everton Lockup, as it's where prisoners were locked up. He included 2 wreaths as they are apparently symbols of victory, and the motto, which has appeared ever since, "Non satis optimum," which means nothing but the best is good enough. Quite ironic these days, but there was one year where they didn't appear in the badge, back in 2013, when the club modernised their badge and came up with this. And this is what happened. Yeah, a petition, something which Hull fans also did in 2014, which apparently worked, as the following season they came up with 3 different designs and asked fans to pick their favourite, with this one being the winner, which looks similar to the one they introduced 23 years before, so it makes you wonder why they bothered at all really. Hearts. Hearts, or Hearts of Midlothian FC to give them their full name, take their name and badge from a pavement, or sidewalk as you might know it, probably why you can see paving stones around the edge of the badge. Yeah, odd, let me explain. In 1817, the city's prison and place of execution was torn down, and in its place sits this artistic little number on the pavement. So when Hearts were founded 57 years later, the lazy owners just took this and used something similar on the shirts. Over time have banged on the club initials and slid in the Scottish flag, and Bob's your uncle, leading to this beauty which has been theirs since 1995. Juventus. The name Juventus comes from the Latin Juventus, meaning youth, so quite why the club is nicknamed the Old Lady is anyone's guess. This is the logo they've had since 2017. Not a decision that went down well, shall we say, but for the best part of 112 years they had a badge like this, with only minor changes in between. The first badge contained a bull, which was taken the city's crest, which was replaced by a zebra in the late 1920s in line with the club's nickname, and I'm hoping I don't need to tell you where the nickname the Zebras comes from. What's interesting about the bulls, or the zebras, is that they became the first club in the world to have stars on their badge showing their league titles when they won their 10th in 1958, and the show-offs now have the right to show 3 stars above the badge. Liverpool. Liverpool's badge is rather shit really, showing just the liverbird, the symbol of Liverpool, with a branch in its beak, which apparently symbolises Liverpool's port heritage. That's port as in a shipping port, not port as in alcohol. But it's Liverpool's historic badges I wanted to take a look at, starting in 1992, and this was created for their centenary year, and includes the Shankly Gates at the top, which are outside the entrance to Anfield, the club anthem You'll Never Walk Alone, which was slapped just beneath, which was nicked from a song, and a year later it was updated to include these, which stayed on the badge until 2012, with these eternal flames burning in memory of the 97 people who died in the Hillsborough disaster in 1989, and the badge was modernised in 1999. Manchester United. This was Manchester United's first badge, so let's take a look at Man City's first badge. Whoa, what's going on there? Both teams shared a badge in parts of the 40s, 50s and 60s, with both teams using the crest of the city of Manchester. In 69 the club started to use this abomination, with a ship symbolising the city's trade, and the stripes coming from the local Grelly family, barons of Manchester, and these white roses. But the badge must have been designed by someone colourblind, as the wrong colours were used for the lines, and white roses signify Yorkshire, even though Manchester's in Lancashire. Thankfully they never wore this one on the shirts, and in 1970 they introduced the logo, which is pretty much stuck to this day, using the Red Devil, a nickname that manager Matt Busby came up with as they thought it would be intimidating to opponents, and the roses of Yorkshire were replaced with footballs, which was updated to remove football club in 1998. Marseille. Marseille's badge is the famous OM with a star above for their Champions League win, and the phrase "dot au but" meaning straight on goal or straight to the goal, but it started life not as OM but as DM for the initials of the founder. René Dufour de Montmirail formed OM in 1899 and used this familiar looking thing, which was his own personal seal. You know, the types that sealed letters and that with in the olden days, before ending up with this beauty in 2004. So in the late 1890s, this is where the phrase DMing people was invented after the Marseille founder, when he literally used to DM people. Okay, that's not strictly true, but it sounds good, doesn't it? Milan. Milan was part founded by Englishmen, which is why the English flag of St George appears in the badge, except that it doesn't. This red cross is actually the St Ambrose cross from the flag of Milan. For about 6 years in the 80s their badge was this monstrosity, showing a devil as the club were nicknamed by one of their founders, and for the season in 2014 they used this on their away shirt, which is somehow even worse, which was used to celebrate their new headquarters Casa Milan, but thankfully have used this smooth design since 1998. Newcastle United. Just like the Manchester clubs, Newcastle copied by using their city's coat of arms as their badge. Well, technically they copied Newcastle, as the Magpies used it first, but hey-oh. The first time it appeared on one of their shirts was in 1969 after winning the Intercities Cup final. Next followed these two designs, which I quite like to be honest, until this in 1988, which almost went all the way back to their roots. The towers from the castle, which was built in 1080 by William the Conqueror's son Robert, which he really imaginatively named Newcastle. Seahorses signify the city's port and shipbuilding industry. The shield contains the colours of the team, and the little rascal on top of the tower is gripping a flag which contains a version of the Cross of St George. It's a lovely badge, innit? RB Leipzig. Red Bull might be full of sugar, but it didn't exactly hit the sweet spot when they took over various teams around the world, with an identical badge for each team. That is, except for Leipzig. As German rules prevent clubs being majority owned by a company, the cheeky chappies at Red Bull drank a can, grew wings, then came up with a solution. Remove Red Bull from the badge, slightly amend the balls, and call the team RB Leipzig, which, even though numerous commentators get this wrong, doesn't mean Red Bull Leipzig, but instead means Rasenball Sport. Yeah, of course it does. What complete utter Red Bull. Roma. If you didn't know any better, you could look at the Roma badge and say, ew, what the hell's going on? But let me try to explain. Legend has it that brothers Romulus and Remus were saved and raised by a she-wolf. Now, call me sceptical, but I can't really see that happening. But anyway, we'll roll with it, as Romulus then went on to found the city of Rome and became its first king. It gets more bizarre as Remus was later killed either by his bro or by one of his supporters for disagreeing with him, but that's apparently the story of how Rome was born, with the club using the she-wolf and the brothers on the badge, with the wolf first appearing on the badge in 1978 with this rather smart design. Sampdoria. No list of club badges is complete without the one that looks like a scruffy dog wearing a hat smoking a pipe, while the background looks like a TV that's lost signal, but there's so much more to the Samp badge than that. The name itself is interesting when the two clubs merged, when Sampdoria and Andrea Doria merged and Samp just merged the two names, and thus Sampdoria was born. The badge shows a bearded sailor wearing a hat with a pipe in his mouth resembling the patron saint of Genoa, a logo which some Karens reported to anti-smoking groups in 2009 as they felt it set a bad example to kids, but it's one of the most recognisable badges in world football. Southampton. There's a lot going on in Southampton's badge, a club which was once home for Mick Channon, Alan Shearer, Matt Le Tissier, Gareth Bale and Franny Benali. The club nickname, the Saints, came from their original foundation in 1885 as a church club, hence the halo. The scarf contains the club colours, the oak trees repping the New Forest and also Southampton Common, which is a park in the city centre. The water is a nod to Southampton's importance as a port, and the white rose comes from the city crest. It was updated to this one in 1995 from this one, where the old style football was updated due to copyright reasons. Yeah, I can't figure that one out either. And at the time, the club was having problems with fake shirts, so they hoped an updated badge would solve the problem. Not sure how, they just create fake shirts with the updated badge on, but whatever. Speeding through a few others which didn't need a full explanation, but I still liked one or two aspects of the badge anyway. Rayo means lightning in Spanish, hence the lightning bolt in Rayo Vallecano's badge. Fiorentina's French Lily is a nod to Calcio Fiorentino, a medieval version of football. Real Betis once had this abomination, which was later replaced by this, which was hated by their fans as it contained an unlucky 13 stripes, which weren't that unlucky as they won their only ever La Liga title wearing it. And Valencia were going to release a new clothing line in 2013 featuring a modified bat from their badge, until DC Comics came along and peered on their parade as they felt it looked too much like the Batman logo, which is just a bat. I mean, any bat would look like the Batman logo, not even considering that Valencia had a bat in their logo 20 years before Batman was even a thing. Palermo's first badge proudly declared their founding year 1898, which they thought we wouldn't notice as they weren't founded until 2 years later. This thing was voted the most beautiful club crest of all time in 2013 by readers of sports magazine Guardian Sportivo. I'm sure it's just coincidence that the magazine headquarters is in Turin, where Torino are based. And in 1976, Borussia Dortmund adopted this beauty, which uses the company logo of their sponsor, Samson the tobacco company. Hertha Berlin's badge in 1995 didn't please fans as it contained the word or variants of Berlin 3 times. Cologne badge is quite interesting as it contains a goat which the club were given as a gift from a circus in 1950, and the 1 means that it's the first club in the city, which is part of tradition in Germany. Schalke shows the initial of the club, the year it was founded, a mining hammer which celebrates the coal mines and miners in the area, and the hammer cleverly creates a white J which stands for Gelsenkirchen, the area where they're based. These things in the Stuttgart badge are supposed to be antlers, something that Porsche also used in their logo as they were founded in Stuttgart. And PSG's badge is inspired by the Blackpool Tower for some reason. Staying in France, Stade de Reims were without an official badge for about 7 years in the 90s as they weren't allowed to use their old badge due to rules on advertising alcohol, which if you're wondering is because Reims are based where the bottled bubbly comes from. Saint Etienne had these little beauties in the 70s and 80s, which is the panther actually symbolising one of their players. As Malian striker Salif Keita was so popular and was nicknamed the Black Panther, they actually made the panther part of the badge and later a mascot. Which makes me wonder which players would be added to a badge these days. Answers in the comments, I guess. Corinthians have an anchor and 2 oars behind the badge to show their club's success in water sports, which is weird. Whereas over in Portugal, Benfica's badge contains a bicycle tyre in the background of all things. As in 1908, Benfica was formed when 2 clubs merged, and one of them, Grupo Sport Benfica, was a cycling club. And the lazy feckers just took Benfica's badge and slapped it on top of Grupo Sport Benfica's badge for this, which has pretty much been their badge since 1908. Over in Scotland, Celtic's badge is completely Irish, not Scottish, as the club was set up to bring joy into the lives of Irish immigrants who settled in Scotland in the mid-1800s. Which is why, for the club's centennial in 1988, they used this badge for 1 season, showing the Irish cross. Zenit introduced this in 2013, which prompted the English newspaper, the Daily Mail, to call it one of the ugliest in the world, for which Zenit responded with this beauty. LA Galaxy don't have a star on their badge, so you may be wondering what the hell this is. Well, it's a quasar, which is the core of a galaxy. See what they did there? And another mistake usually made is the hearts and head in veins badge, which aren't actually hearts, they're water lilies, symbolising where they're from. Malmo in Sweden, the birthplace of Zlatan, put 2 stars on their badge to show 20 league wins, which generated complaints from people as at the time they'd only won 17 official titles. But just like Zlatan, they do what they want. The axe in Portland Timbers badge refers to the timber industry, which is why their colours are green, and the 3 lines not only represent trees in the area, but also the club's roots, the North American Soccer League, the United Soccer League, and the MLS. And Fluminense's has stayed pretty much the same for around 120 years, which is mad. And staying in America, Chicago Fire were named after an actual fire, a tragedy that killed nearly 300 people in 1871. And before this awful thing, they had this, which looked like the city's fire brigade badge. And that's it. I probably could have bored you for hours with these 3 club badges, but I've just limited it to a few I like. If there's any I've missed, drop a comment, and if enough people like it, I'll do a short on it. But I quite enjoyed making this one and researching it, so show me some love in the comments, and see you in the next one.